An update now on Steve Donziger, the crusading lawyer whose efforts to help indigenous people in the Amazon rainforest in Ecuador ended up getting him disbarred and sent to prison for contempt of court. Rhonda.
Brian, Donziger had refused to turn his computer over to lawyers for Chevron, who had accused him of dishonesty in gaining a $10 billion verdict in the courts in Ecuador. He was sentenced to 6 months in prison earlier this year, but in a surprise development, he's now been released and he's back home, Brian.
And we're joined now by Stephen Donziger, no longer behind bars. Stephen, how did you get released?
I don't know exactly. It's a bit of a mystery. I think the legal authority was COVID. Congress allows the Bureau of Prisons to release people who they think are at risk of contracting COVID early after serving 25% of their sentence. And when I say release, Brian, I don't mean released. I'm not free. They release you to home confinement where you're still under the custody of the Bureau of Prisons, as I am. So I'm not free. I'm just serving out the rest of my sentence at home. The prison I was at in Danbury was overcrowded. I mean, there were a lot of people there. And I think that the prison officials, looking at the fact that I was literally the only person in the entire facility there for a misdemeanor, everybody else was there for a felony. They're like, my sentence was so short. They probably concluded, like, why are we wasting a bed on someone who really probably shouldn't be here to begin with?
Even before you went behind bars, you had served almost 800 days on house arrest. You still have another 5 months or so, I guess. Does it change your mind at all about your stand and refusing to turn over your devices, your background material, electronic devices to the lawyers for Chevron?
Well, that's a great question. The short answer is no, but I have done a lot of reflection about how this all went down and whether, I might have made errors in judgment on my end. I'll say this, I took a principled stand to protect my clients. I don't believe I did anything wrong. I believe I'm innocent. I still have a pending appeal that I hope to win. That said, going forward, if this issue continues, I'm going to be represented by counsel and we are going to work our way through it. I have never taken the position that I would never turn my computer over to Chevron under court order. That was not the issue. The issue was whether upon turning it over to Chevron, privileged information in my computer would be protected. That was the issue. And, that's still the issue and it has to be sort of worked through. But, obviously I believe I'm a man of the rule of law. I comply with court orders. As you look back on things that go down, Brian, there's a lot of things in life. I mean, if you knew certain things that later, you might have done stuff differently. But, I stand by my position. I think it's the right position, the ethical position. I'll remind people no lawyer ever has been charged with criminal contempt of court for what I did, which was essentially take an appeal of a civil discovery order.
Chevron is not letting up, though. They still want your devices and they still have been pushing for you to be behind bars, I guess.
Well, listen, this whole idea originated with Chevron. I mean, this was a prosecution by a private law firm that had Chevron as a client after the government refused to prosecute. And yeah, you can look at it like, hey, why didn't you turn your computer over? And that's one way to look at it. And another way is like, why are you being prosecuted by a Chevron law firm after you won a large civil judgment on behalf of indigenous peoples in the Amazon against Chevron? And I think this latter issue is really what's important for all Americans and really all people in the world.
And of course, we should point out that the prosecutors in the federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York declined to prosecute you, but the judge went ahead and appointed this private lawyer to do just that. So and let me ask you, as you sat behind bars up in Danbury, what were you thinking?
Well, look, first of all, on a personal level, it's challenging to be in prison. It was far more difficult than I expected, frankly. I mean, it's a low security prison, but because of COVID, it was pretty much locked down the whole time I was there, which means we couldn't get outside. Also, I'll say this, the medical care is really complicated, particularly in the age of COVID. I was worried, I'm 60 years old, that if I got sick, it would be not a good place, not a good thing, not the right place for me. And I really wanted to get out of there. And, as soon as I could. And I'm thankful and grateful to the Bureau of Prisons that they made the decision that they did, which I think was based on policy and was appropriate.
The point of contempt of court and sending you to prison obviously was to try to break you, to get you to comply with the court order. Are you broken now?
First of all, I'm definitely not broken. I mean, we're going to continue to fight on. There's so many lawyers from around the world who have called me to join our team. I think we're as strong as ever, partly as a result of what I would call this overreach, putting an American human rights lawyer in prison. In terms of holding Chevron accountable for its pollution in the Amazon, which is what drove me to work on this issue, there's still work to do. We're not broken. To the contrary, we're going to keep moving forward until they pay the judgment and the indigenous peoples in the Amazon can have their ancestral lands restored and they can, get what they deserve, which is compensation for the harm caused them as ordered by various courts around the world.
And let me have you respond. Chevron continues to maintain, allegedly you bribed a judge, you presented fabricated evidence. They didn't like your tactics at all. And in fact, the judgment you received in Ecuador, I guess, has been upended in this country.
Well, look, these are the facts. I'm sure I disagree with Chevron's view, obviously. We've been at loggerheads for years. We, meaning me and other lawyers on behalf of these indigenous peoples, won a $10 billion pollution judgment after an 8-year trial that has been affirmed by Ecuador's Supreme Court. It's been affirmed for enforcement purposes by Canada's Supreme Court and all 28 appellate judges. There's one judge in the US that they always cite, Judge Kaplan, who ruled against me after a non-jury trial where they paid a witness to claim I bribed a judge. It didn't happen. It's been rejected by 28 appellate judges in other countries.
It did not happen. Definitely did not happen.
It did not happen. No, it didn't. There was no bribery of a judge. They paid a witness to say that about me, but it did not happen. There's no corroborating evidence. Judges, serious judges all over the world have looked at this and rejected it. So, it's just not true. Now, it is a judicial ruling here by this one judge, and they try to play on it constantly when they give statements to journalists, but it's simply not true. The judgment is legitimate. It's been affirmed by 6 different appellate courts, and it's owned by it's not my judgment. It's the judgment of the people of Ecuador. They have lawyers, and their intention, as I understand it, is to make sure that judgment is enforced, so the money is paid and Chevron is forced to comply with the rule of law.
And finally, just to, how are you doing now? Out of prison, back with your family for the holidays. How are you doing personally?
I'm thrilled to be home. I can't explain it. I've been swirling with emotion, since I got out. I realized how much pain I carried out of that prison. I mean, the experiences to see so many people hurt inside, and then to come out and see my family was hurting. And I'll say this, going into prison is often as harder on the people who love you on the outside than it is on you on the inside. I've realized that. A lot of people told me that. It's really true. I could at least control to an extent what I did inside, but when you're outside, you're like, oh my God, what's going on? Is he, there's no communication, is he even sleeping? And I can tell you, I didn't have one decent night's sleep in 45 days. It was really unsettling. I do want to acknowledge, though, that it's, I met a lot of strong people in prison who I learned from them, how they handled the time. And my sentence obviously was ridiculously short compared to most people. But to me, it felt like an eternity. I'm really happy to be home, and I'm happy to be with my family, and I'm happy to be able to speak again to people like you. So thank you for asking.
All right, Stephen Donziger, thank you so much for being with us again here tonight.
Thank you.
Up next, inside the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and America's other violent extremist groups. We'll be joined by the photojournalist who has been tracking them. You're watching Brian Ross Investigates on the Law & Crime Trial Network.
Hi, this is Dan Abrams with exciting news for all of our Law & Crime followers on YouTube. You can now get the live Law & Crime Network with YouTubeTV for all of your daily live trial coverage, legal news, expert analysis, and original true crime programs. Subscribe to YouTubeTV today and then locate Law & Crime in the channel guide. And for only $1.99 a month, you can add the network to your bundle. Watch Law and Crime every day with YouTube TV. We put you in the jury box.